So we're looking at the two main categories of costs that businesses will have. So we have fixed costs. These are costs that really remain the same across a range of production. So I'm putting down here examples of rent, insurance, the salary of a supervisor that we have. So think about a business that has, let's say, offices and a factory making stuff. So two different divisions. So the cost of rent, no matter what our quantity is, so this diagram that we have here, we've got quantity on the bottom, and on the top axis we've got the money involved, so the amount of the cost. So if we produce 5,000 goods or 10,000 goods, the cost for rent is going to be the same. We just increase the amount of materials we put in, but we still have to pay the same amount of rent. So those fixed costs will start, if we produce zero, so our quantity is zero, that fixed cost might be this amount here that I'm signifying, but as we produce more and more and more, those costs remain the same. So that's our fixed cost line. Variable costs, on the other hand, are quite different. Think of these as ingredients, things that go into the products that we make. So we call, like, the things we put into our product, we call materials, direct materials. And direct wages will be the factory worker who's actually going and making the products for us. So those costs go into products. So if we produce zero, so again, I'm just doing my diagram with quantity and money. If we produce nothing at the origin, we'll have no cost. As we produce a few, the costs go up and up and up and up. So variable cost goes up as a straight line. So the more the cost goes up, so the more the quantity goes up, the more we produce, the more costs we're going to have. If we produce 10,000 goods compared to 5,000 goods, we'll have twice the amount of materials, twice the amount of direct wages. So it goes up as a straight line. So costs, fixed costs and variable costs, two different categories. Now we've made an assumption here with fixed costs that the cost is going to be always the same, but actually in reality, if we start producing dramatically more goods compared to what we used to, we find that our costs remain fixed only over a certain range. So we eventually get to the stage, if our quantity goes up and up and we start increasing our quantity, eventually we're going to get to a stage where we just don't have enough space. So we're going to have to rent a bigger factory. So when we rent a bigger factory, well, that means that we'll have to pay more rent, more insurance, more supervisor salary. So when we get to that point where we can't produce anymore, we'll rent the bigger place and those costs go up. Eventually, if we start wanting to produce even more again, those costs go up again. So we end up with these things called step fixed costs. So they increase in steps, whereas variable costs increase gradually. But generally, fixed costs we're going to deal with are ones that remain the same over a range of production. Now, there are some costs that have a fixed and variable element in them, so we call those mixed costs. So in our mixed costs here, let's say the simplest example I might give you is, let's say, your electricity bill. Included in your electricity bill is you're paying for the rent of the electrical line, this electrical service to your building, and as well as that, you're paying for the amount of units of electricity that you're going to use. So if you're away on holidays and you close down your building and you turn off the power to the building, so there's no electricity possibly being used, well, you still have to pay for the fixed cost, the rent of the line. So what happens is you end up with a cost that looks like that. So that will be mixed costs. Now, how did we get that? Well, we started off with a fixed cost line because there's a fixed cost element in it, and we add to that there's a variable cost element in it. This is the amount of units of electricity that we use. We add those two together, and basically what happens is the variable cost line gets shifted out by the amount of the fixed costs. So that's how we end up getting the figure for mixed costs. That's how we end up getting that diagram. Okay. Now, total cost then similarly for a business, so is when we add all of our fixed and our variable cost together. So total cost for any business is going to be a line that looks like that. And that's quantity and that's money.